3, 2, 1, blast off. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, your weekly visit with two talking heads talking with you about the services, strategies, and success tips you need to make it big in managed services. My name is Rich Freeman. I'm Chief Analyst at Channel Master, the organization responsible for the show. I am joined with you side by side this week, as I am every week, by our CEO and Chief Strategist at Channel Master. His name is Eric Simpson. Eric, how you doing?
Doing great, Rich. Getting ready for taking a few well-deserved days off next week for my family vacation.
You're going to be hitting the slopes, right?
Yeah, we're going to be hitting the slopes in Park City.
Lovely. Don't bring a laptop. Turn off the phone. Just go skiing and watch sports on TV and whatever you do to relax. You've earned some time off, buddy.
You really should be a comedian, Rich. That's just saying. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I will try to unplug as much as possible, but as most folks in our audience know, it is really, really hard to completely unplug for an entire week when you've got a lot of balls you're juggling. So I'll do my best, my friend.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you can get it from 4 balls to 3, that's progress. So just do what you can. Take some time off. In the meantime, let's dive into our story of the week, and stay with me on this one, Eric. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey here, but this is something that's on my mind right now as I'm working on this week's edition of Channelholic, my blog. So this week, or actually it was last week, Omdia, the analyst organization, published their 2026 MSP predictions report. It was authored by Robin Odie, one of the analysts over there. FYI, he's going to be our guest on the show a few episodes from now, so we'll get into that in detail with him. But one of the things that they announced when they released this report is that the best case scenario in 2026 has managed services revenue growing 10% to $635 billion globally. Now that's a best case scenario. Keep in mind, though, that's a little below historical norms for managed services growth year over year. And it's actually a little bit below the overall prediction at Omdia for IT spending growth in 2026 is 10.2%. So 10% growth, and again, best case, but even if it comes in 8-9%, nothing to feel too terrible about. But it does suggest that this is going to be a somewhat weaker, a slower year for MSPs than they've seen in the recent past, mostly due, Omdia says, and I think they're right, to economic issues, global uncertainty, et cetera. So, okay, you're an MSP, you've got that going on, basically. You've also got the fact that you are competing with some very, very large MSPs, spending a lot of money on AI automation tools. And there are a lot of tools available to you as well. But if you want to keep your bottom line healthy in what's going to be a somewhat more difficult financial environment in 2026, and you want to stay competitive with these big companies that are investing in AI-based automation, you probably need to be thinking about that too, and maybe even hitting the gas pedal a little bit, doing a little bit more of that. This might be a good time for that. Which brings us to where I'm going here, because it's kind of a conundrum in my mind, and I'm curious to get your take on it. So one of the things I'm going to be writing about in Channelholic this week is a profile of a startup called Nanites, Nanites. They're not GA yet. But they are building an AI-powered network management tool. Highly autonomous, but it's still very much a human-in-the-loop kind of system. So it will triage and diagnose, and it will do everything required to fix this network issue, except actually fix it. And then it goes to a technician and says, here's what I want to do. Should I do it, basically? And I asked Alex Cronin, is his name, the founder of the company, are you going? I asked everyone at these AI native startups this question: how autonomous are you going, and when do you expect to get there? And he's thinking about maybe someday the system could be fully autonomous, but he basically said, I will never flip that switch as long as LLMs continue to hallucinate. And LLMs are always going to hallucinate. This is me talking, not him, but that's not going away, right? Like even OpenAI says we can reduce hallucination, and we're doing that. We're never going to eliminate it for various reasons. And there are all sorts of people who say it's like a feature, not a bug. You get useful creative information out of the system because it hallucinates. Hallucination is not going away. Networks are critical infrastructure. That's not changing. And so Nanite certainly kind of believes it's always, pretty much, always going to be dangerous for a fully autonomous AI network management system to be operating in an MSP environment. And the question this raises for me are, okay, so let's say level one, like password resets, that's one end of a spectrum. Pretty safe. You can use AI to do that fully autonomously now. And maybe at the other end of the spectrum, it's anything having to deal with the network, anything having to do with critical infrastructure, that might be over the line too much. If you're an MSP under some financial and competitive pressure to go as far as you can on AI automation, where do you draw the line? And how do you figure that out? I don't have an answer to that question. Like I said, this is something I'm writing about in the blog this week. This is the question I'm asking. I'll see. Do you have any thoughts on that? And does it strike you as it does me as something an MSP kind of needs to figure out? One of the many things about AI they've got to figure out these days.
Mm, 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 mm. Hold that thought, because I want to first go back to the Omdia forecasts, and then I'll jump back into this hot bath water of how far do we allow AI to go. So what would be interesting to me, Rich, because I'm listening, to you describe the new stats, and I completely understand why there's uncertainty. I think all of us do in the markets these days. But what I would be curious to imagine to think about is not just the economic, stressors that may be creating this top line revenue pressure entirely. What I'm also thinking is, is it because MSPs, and I'm not sure, I don't know, but I'm going to hit you with this. Is it because MSPs are looking to improve efficiency and profitability by introducing AI, and so not really growing top line revenue? But the other indicator would be, are they growing bottom line profitability? I would love to see if there's some statistics about that year over year. Like, where can we figure that out? Because if top line is not growing as fast as it has been year over year historically, is bottom line growing?
So a couple of quick things. So remember, Robin's coming on the show in a few weeks. So hold on to that question
Yeah,
because we can ask it of him and get his take on that.
yeah.
The other thing is that growth, that 10% growth number, that top line number, that's money being spent by businesses with
Oh,
MSPs, right? That's the income coming to. But you're asking a very important question, and this is something for us to ask Robin about. The Omdia's take on that is the issue is economic uncertainty, global uncertainty, et cetera. But there are going to be people who are going to wonder, are businesses spending less with MSPs because they don't need MSP services as much thanks to AI? He doesn't think that's the explanation from what I can make out. And that's not, to me, the sort of Occam's razor explanation for what's going on here, but it's not a totally implausible theory either. And it's, it very much kind of echoes a lot of the nervousness slash panic we've seen on Wall Street around the effect of AI on SaaS companies and so on. And so that is a topic we can get into on the show in a few weeks directly with Robin Odie.
yeah. I'm looking forward to that conversation very much. So back to your, when does Skynet officially launch here as the AIs become, more system of action, as we've been talking about recently, and more autonomous within some guardrails. I think, Rich, that the seasoned, mature MSPs will be very, very cautious about how much they'll be pushing the envelope a little bit further, but they'll be much more cautious, or lean much more cautiously toward allowing AI to actually take action. They will be, they will take a process of careful consideration, testing, and then kind of unlocking some features along the way. What I'm not so sure about are the new MSPs that are starting businesses today. All these new MSPs that are more born in the cloud and are just more out there without that, that experience and, the pain of failure that some of us veterans have experienced along the way. Those are the folks that I'm not so sure will not see an opportunity to try a little bit of more relaxed um, perspective on these things. So my guidance would be, treat it like a firewall. Everything, nothing is being done by the AI. It's asking for your approval. Someone senior in your organization, depending upon the severity or the impact of that change, you're never going to get away from change management, Rich. And so, with the advent of AI, I fear that we may skip some of those change management best practices where we are identifying the need for change. We are exploring all the ramifications of that change. We are requesting approval to implement that change. Then we're monitoring that change in case we need to roll it back. I mean, these are all tenets of just best practices, IT service management. When the AI is out there just doing things, it can be disastrous if it does the wrong thing or exposes data or allows someone internally in a user customer's environment to have access to data that they shouldn't have through their LLM that they're using internally. I mean, there's a lot of governance here, but the first step for governance is for the MSP themselves.
Yeah, I really like the generational take on this that you brought up there, because it's reminding me of a conversation we had last fall. I think it was at the DattoCon conference with the CEO and CRO of PIA, which
Mm-hmm.
is one of these AI service desk automation, a pretty well known one. And they told us basically we could add a lot more autonomy to the system right now than we have in production, but we're trying not to get too far out in front of the MSPs and what they're comfortable with, basically. And I think the idea that somebody who's been in managed services for a period of time now has a different comfort level with autonomous AI than a younger, new to the market, sort of born in the AI kind of MSP is probably right. And over time, you're going to see people get more comfortable more quickly with more autonomy and so on. But yeah, that I think the comfort level is actually going to be a defining issue in terms of how far people are willing to go.
I mean, think about it this way, Rich. If I'm the CTO in an enterprise, as I have been, I'm going to be very, very cautious about anything that I introduce into that enterprise IT infrastructure. And MSPs are the outsourced IT department, and the VCIOs, the VCTOs, the VCZOs, VCAIO. You've got to be the VCAIO as if you're running that enterprise infrastructure, even if it's a 15 user SMB. I mean, it becomes more critical because, that can, the mistakes made for a smaller client can have much higher detrimental impacts. I mean, heck, we've seen things that force SMBs to go out of business, based upon technology or security or the lack thereof.
Well, that right there is a good reason to be cautious about introducing something new into the business. Another good reason is every time you introduce something, you're potentially introducing complexity, which is in and of itself a problem. And it takes us straight to your tip of the week, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. So, yeah, so as we talk about, you know, revenue growth and profitability and governance for MSPs and all of these business owners um, start a business because they want to build some equity. They want to generate as much highly profitable revenue as possible. And the enemy of having a great revenue strategy and a profitable revenue strategy is complexity. So, you know, I know that there are many MSPs out there that, you know, test and pressure test new technologies all the time. That's a great process to identify new upcoming services or solutions or things that you can roll into your clients' environments. But I also know that in and of itself can be very distracting to an organization. You know, I, and I'm a, you know, I won't say a victim of this, but I think I've done this myself where I've gone to, in my early career, you know, gone to these shows and things and saw these great solutions and then come in. And I had one colleague that used to call it seagulling, where a seagull, you know, flies over and just, you know, delivers a goodie on the way on people's heads or whatever. So I'd come in, I'd seagull all this stuff to, you know, my lead engineers and stuff and say, hey, look at all this great stuff, you know, go take a demo and do all this stuff, distracting. So, you know, focus. We spoke recently on the show. A tip of the week was just maintaining focus and being very clear about it. The market leading MSPs, Rich, are trying to simplify to scale, right? Trying to reduce complexity. We're calling it sprawl, technology sprawl, vendor sprawl. So if your business is getting more complex but not more profitable, here's 3 tips to give you a clarity. Number 1, always review your your service catalog. Understand everything that you're managing for clients, because if you've been in the MSP business for, you know, a decade, you probably got services and solutions that you no longer sell to new clients, but you're supporting older clients with. You may have bloat. You may have services that you could reduce the cost of by either negotiating with your existing vendor partners or looking at other opportunities. But again, maintaining focus. If your focus is to increase profitability, Rich, everything that derails you or becomes noise and distracts you from doing that is a negative to you and your team and your organization. Believe me, technicians don't want to manage 17, 20, 50 solutions for clients. They want a stack that they can get trained on, get certified on, and deliver wins. And so do MSP business owners. So look at your stack, try to do it. I would say, you know, is quarterly too much? Maybe for some organizations, maybe biannually, certainly every year. You've got to look at what you're doing, and especially when it's close time to renewal for some of your products and services. This is the time to be assessing your options. Number 2, review your top 10 clients for delivery friction. Sometimes we bring on clients and we hang on to them, Rich, not because they're the easiest, most strategic folks to work with, but because they represent such a large portion of our top line revenue, which in and of itself is a risk, right? Having more than about 15% of your total revenue being allocated to one client is risky. Buyers don't like that. They don't like top 10% of your client base, you know, consuming more than 25% of your total revenue, right? So there's that revenue concentration risk that we talk about. Look for accounts that are just not growing, stagnant, you know, no growth opportunity, and look for those folks that are creating more work for your team and be honest with them. If you need to raise your rates to support them, if they're underwater, I mean, I know a handful of MSPs that I know personally that are maintaining large accounts because they're not they may not be as profitable as somebody they would sell their package to tomorrow, but because the cash flow is cash flowing the business, which in and of itself, is another challenge. So take a look at where your margins are, take a look at your lowest margin clients and start making some, I like to say player trades, right? We're trying to go to the championship every year. We're going to make some player trades to get there. And in this conversation, the players are some of these clients that either are just difficult to work with, friction, lot more tickets than you ever thought what they would create when you sold them that package. Take action one way or another on those. And then last one, Rich, is pick one thing in your organization that you are going to simplify this year, if not this quarter. I would say this quarter. Pick one thing every quarter that you are going to simplify, whether it's standardizing on a bundle, removing, extra tool sprawl, eliminating some custom offerings, like one thing every quarter that allows you to keep focused on simplifying, reducing complexity, and then by doing so, you're going to make higher profit and have scale to bring on more highly profitable clients as you grow.
So, I hope nobody is going to dispute the case that you make there for the relationship between simplicity and profitability on the one hand and exit value on the other hand. So, I mean, if we kind of accept the value for an MSP of simplifying where it makes sense, what you're reminding me of, it's maybe not a perfect analogy, but as I'm listening to you talk about this, I'm thinking about this concept in finance called zero basing the budget, where, instead of basing next year's budget on whatever this year's budget was, and we're going to, plus 5%, minus 5%, you go all the way back to zero and ask yourself, do I need to be spending anything on this? And if the answer is yes, well, how much really makes sense? Based on the world as it exists and my business as it exists today, what's the right number? Not in relation to last year's number. And that's kind of what you're going at here. I mean, okay, I've got this set of client relationships here, but let's go all the way back to zero. Which of these client relationships should I still be in next year? And what am I going to do about the ones that really don't make sense for me from a profitability standpoint? I've got this stack of tools. They're integrated. I understand it's not so easy to change vendors and eliminate things, but do I need, like you were saying, do I need all of these tools anymore? Look, go all the way back to zero and ask yourself item by item, is this still something that I should be spending money on and passing cost along to my customers? It strikes me as a very healthy kind of habit for folks in the audience to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I know that MSPs like to have these kind of bespoke, best in breed type of solutions in their stack. I mean, I get it. I came from the enterprise, Rich, when I started my IT company and later became, one of the early MSPs. But, I came with that mentality that said, I'm going to deliver enterprise grade services and solutions to the SMB. Well, that comes with a very high price when you're comparing what we use in the enterprise to what is good for SMBs. That's why we don't deliver the full framework of ITIL to an SMB customer. Like there's no way they could afford it, right? For everything there. So you kind of use about 30% of it. So if you're delivering these enterprise grade solutions that are very costly to your clients, maybe that's, and again, kind of coloring outside the box. You want to standardize and simplify so that every one of your clients has a bundle of services, and I like the good, better, best model because it allows flexibility to move clients up and down when there's economic uncertainty and things like that, and helps you maintain your margin, and it gives you upsell opportunities that really generate higher margin across the entire client life cycle for you. But, if you have some of these really bespoke, costly tools, there better be a really good justification for that, right? Not because, okay, we have one client that needed this one thing and we're supporting it, but we'll never sign up another client in that vertical ever again or support any more clients with that tool. that would be the hardest decision, Rich. If they are a large client that is generating, top line revenue, maybe not a lot of ball on it, or let's just say they're profitable too. Okay, maybe there's a set aside for that client. But moving forward, we are putting people into these good, better, best packages. We're not allowing us to stray off and support something else. I remember, Rich, long tip of the week this week. I remember a client that we had that had a very, very unique, platform that they wanted us to manage. And we said, you know what? We're going to exclude that from our core managed services bundle for you. And we will charge you per ticket until we evaluate whether it's something we can support or not. But it's outside, it's out of scope. Open some tickets, let us get a feel for it. And that gave us the opportunity, Rich, to let them know, look, either, we're going to support it or not, but we don't know enough about it yet. So through that scenario, actually, and this was one of those unique things where we eventually figured out that the way that the vendor was supporting the tool and the things that they were telling them, basically, our technicians figured out there were some flaws in the configuration, and they solved those. And then there were no basic tickets for that solution. So then at that point, we said, okay, you know what? We'll uplift you this much a month just to manage and maintain it, and we can move forward. But those are very unique opportunities. Today, I would say if a client doesn't fit into one of these bundles of services, then that's not a good fit for us when we're looking towards profitability and we're looking towards an exit event.
Okay. Well, we talked a little bit about AI systems of action earlier on there. Let's talk a little bit about an AI system of record for MSPs, specifically a very young company called Lexful. You and I talked about them just an episode or two ago on the show here. We are pleased to be joined in a moment by the CEO of that company, Pinar Ormeci. And we're going to get into what makes that company and its ambitions very interesting in just a little bit. On the other side of this break, stick around. We're going to be right back. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, our Spotlight interview segment, where we are very excited to be joined by the CEO of a brand new company, very interesting company called Lexful. Her name is Pinar Ormeci. And Pinar, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Rich, for having me. Thank you.
So like I say, Lexful is a brand new company. We're going to kind of get into what it does exactly down the road. But for folks who are new to you, just give us a little bit of a background about who you are, what you do, and how you got to Lexful.
Sure. So I'm Pinar Ormeci. That was a really good pronunciation of my last name. I'm originally from Turkey, so that's why the accent, that's why the interesting name. I've been in the technology sector for a long time. I've been in the US for a long time. My career started as an electrical engineer and in pretty large enterprises in the R&D like Qualcomm, Ericsson, and so on. But after that, I moved into, more P&L loading functionalities. Since 2018, I've been firmly in the startup world. I just love it. It suits my personality. You make an immediate impact. You create something. It's really fun. I do love the ambiguity, the fast pace that comes with the startups. And for the last 5 years, I've been in the MSP space. And guys, I love it. I love the community aspect. I love how even vendors are partners. We're all trying to get the MSPs, scaled in the new world and so on. So I really love the MSP space. Before Lexful, I was the CEO of another MSP first vendor, Timos Networks in cybersecurity. And for the past year, I've been with Lexful. We have been under stealth. And that culminated with our launch last week at Ride of Boom in Vegas, which was really amazing.
Now, like I said, we'll get into what the solution does in just a moment. But I mean, the really sort of simplified version of this is it is an AI-powered documentation tool. And, from an MSP standpoint, that's maybe an interesting place for a startup to focus, right? It probably feels to some folks in the audience out there right now, like documentation is it's a solved use case. We've got tools for that. What was the opportunity in documentation for MSPs that you folks saw and felt that you could address with a new company?
Actually, it's interesting that there are no other companies that approach this, because we see a real pain point in the industry, Rich, when it comes to documentation. Yes, documentation is storing documents and the assets in some place. Maybe that problem has solved, but how do you get from static documentation and from legacy documentation tools that solve for storing information to a true operational intelligence, knowledge operations, where you are actually putting your data to work for you 24/7? So that's the problem that we came to the market with, and there's a real pain point for it. So system of record, yes, documents exist as static documentation, but how do you get to the right context? How do you get to the right answers? How do you make sure your documents are actually up to date? How do you make sure your technicians trust the document that you have versus things having to live as tribal knowledge because people long lost trust with what they have as their data?
Pinar, Rich and I have both been in the MSP channel since the very, very beginnings, and we really appreciate what you said about how the channel is something that really resonates with you. It resonates with us, the community. There's no community like the MSP community that I've ever been a part of. So we appreciate that spirit of everyone growing together and collaborating, and co-opetition is great, but appreciate that shout out there. So I'd like to ask, how exactly does the product work? What exactly does it do for the MSPs from in their normal day-to-day work?
Sure. Let me start with what we do before we even migrate an MSP's existing documentation into Lexful, right? From their legacy documentation tools. A lot of MSPs already have one tool or the other to bring in the assets from their clients, including their passwords, and also to capture their own guidelines, SOPs, compliance frameworks, and all of that. Before we even migrate any of these into Lexful, what we have done is we context engineered an LLM model to live in the MSP space and in the IT world. So before you even bring any of your MSP and client specific data, what we are offering with Lexful is a super smart senior technician that is very well seasoned in all things MSP, best practices, and IT and documentation. So that's number one, right? Like we have pretty smart AI engineers in-house that's been working on this. The number two is, one of the problems with the legacy documentation tools is they were built in a different era before AI. So that's the reason we rebuilt this product platform from the ground up so that AI can seamlessly and safely operate in it. So when we are migrating now the existing documentation into Lexful, one of the things that we do is we restructure, retransform that data so that everything is context, relationships, assets, and so on, that the AI can bubble up the right context and the information instantly. One of the key things about Lexful is how you interact with your documentation or your data or your own secret sauce, if you will, when it comes to onboarding and how you do things, is AI as the UI. So when you first get into Lexful, first thing you will see is an interface similar to ChatGPT or other LLM tools. And you just literally ask, hey, what's the admin password for this client? Or how many devices that need patching for my clients in a certain region? Or what are the devices that with expired warranties? Give me a project plan. Like, what's the does this client comply within this framework? Like stuff like that. Like anything you have as a question, you can now start interacting with AI. Like I said, that is context engineered in the MSP space, and now is getting fed by your MSP guidelines and all the client data. So you can see how powerful is that, right? Our goal really is to have Lexful for the MSPs as an efficiency force multiplier at a minimum for the technicians, right? Getting the right context to the right technician, anchored to the right client, and permission aware instantly. But at Right of Bloom, a lot of the MSPs also asked us about customer success, account management, or revenue use cases, right? This is not a tool only for the technicians, also for the customer success teams, also for the CEOs, founders, before they meet with their client. What you normally do is you try to find the right person who worked with that client. You try to grab context from anyone who knows something. Now you literally just go to Lexful and you just ask for it. So that's the paradigm shift from documentation to a true knowledge operations, where it really is paradigm shifting.
Yeah, I think that's a really kind of critical point. I mean, I set up what you've built as a documentation tool, and that's the easiest way for people to sort of introduce themselves to it. But your vision, what you're building, goes well beyond documentation and the technician and the help desk.
Right.
And that's part of what makes it so interesting to me. You were talking about, upon installation, the system is migrating data in from documentation. But in order to help MSPs in areas like customer success and account management, I mean, clearly you're looking to build a data lake, a data set inside the application that's bigger than the legacy documentation record. So where are you getting data from now? And what does the vision look like for where data will be coming into the Lexful solution over time?
Sure. And Rich, I mentioned, I love your write-up about Lexful enabling God mode for the MSPs, and that is exactly where our vision is. So AI and the model we built gets stronger and smarter as the context that it has gets richer and richer. And that really happens through this assimilation of data, right? Through different resources. And of course, number one is the existing documents and the SOPs and the procedures the MSP already has. And then it comes through RMM and then the PSA. We are, for example, integrated into ScalePad and LionGuard today. What we're working with ScalePad is like bring all that customer success data that they have into Lexful. Suddenly you have a whole customer success context, this operational memory when it comes to the clients and everything that goes with that life cycle. And it makes Lex so much smarter. So things like that, like the more we integrate, the more we grow our circle of influence, if you will, the more contextually richer and the insights will become much better as we integrate more and more into the tool stack that exists today for the MSPs.
Pinar, when we were talking about Lexful recently on the show, I asked Rich, who does Lexful see as their competitors? So I would like to ask you directly now. I'm going to ask it to you in two different ways. First, who do you see out there that is potentially your competition? But then when you're talking to MSP partners and explaining what you do, who do they perceive as being your competitors? So it's the same question, but from two different perspectives. Sure. Where are your thoughts?
Couple of important points here. We are a system of record, meaning we are not here to execute, be a system of action. If anything, what we want to do is accelerate MSPs' own AI journeys in the sense automated workflows, agentic workflows and all the stuff that they do with the AI agents, all the system of actions out there, because AI needs structured data, and we hope that we are the fuel for that. So we're not competing with the system of actions that enable an agentic workforce or workflows and so on. For the system of record, though, like I said, we are an AI native documentation platform. So we are going to replace the existing IT documentation solutions out there. So we are not yet another tool. We are here to replace that the MSPs might already have. And, you ask like names, that's IT Glue, of course, that's Hoodoo, or any other legacy tools that the MSPs traditionally use to store their client data or their SOPs and so on.
So there are a number of different ways you can envision this system impacting an MSP. Let's just talk for starters about the financial impact. So you have access, God mode access to everything that you've ever done for any of your clients. What impact do you expect, or have you seen maybe in testing the system have for MSPs in terms of margins, operational efficiency, et cetera? If somebody in the audience is thinking, what's the ROI for me if I invest in this? What are you seeing, or what do you expect to see?
Honestly, it's game changing, Rich. So in our opinion, the legacy documentation is broken, and it's costing MSPs margin in terms of the signals that they are missing, in terms of the technicians wasting time trying to find the right knowledge, get the right context, and eroding client trust, right? Like when you go to a client and, hey, I'll get back to you, the answers take so long to answer, the QBRs are not completely buttoned up. It really has a real impact on the MSPs in terms of how fast they can scale and what's their margins, right? Like making revenue is one thing, but what about your margins if your like bottom line is not controlled? So that's number one, that with the operational efficiencies, giving proactive insights into, hey, what's the best next thing, giving trends across clients in terms of what worked, what didn't work, being able to give the technicians instant context to be able to troubleshoot the issues as they arise, being able to get in front of the clients in a much more professional way, really buttoned up, crossing the T's, dotting the I's with the help of a platform like, Lexful. I think it really is game changing. But we're just getting started. So these are like the immediate ROI impact in terms of just the operations and the ability to scale. But there's also a monetization opportunity with Lexful, right? Like the SMBs are underserved when it comes to doing some of the things that MSPs can do with Lexful. So, one of the things MSPs also get excited about is, hey, what about like I actually expose this Lexful functionality to some of my clients? Meaning not only as a AI native self-help center, which we enable already today as part of the license, meaning the client and users can come only within their own documentation. They can immediately ask Lex, that's our feature for that AI native knowledge assistant, hey, what's my Zoom password? Like, what's the password? How do this printer is broken, or whatever it is, right? Like what's the Wi-Fi password? So clients already can go to Ask Lex and do this self-help, significantly reducing the volume if the MSP chooses to do so, right? Like it's up to the MSP to enable this functionality or not. But how about I also have the client to be able to come and create documents, manage their own passwords, be able to use the full Lexful functionality for their own workforce. And then, of course, the MSP gets to monetize that. This is just one of the things. Of course, like fundamentally, the ROI to Rich's point, yes, we started as a AI native documentation platform, but what we are really giving you guys is like a super experienced senior technician / executive who is now who knows everything about your MSP, all your documents, and like I said, is completely context engineered in all things MSP and your clients and in the general world. It's really from a labor cost perspective, for the amount you're paying Lexful over a year, you're getting so much more. So we believe the ROI, you'll immediately see it like in the first couple of months.
Yeah, Pinar, that's interesting because, there's nothing that piques an MSP's interest more than saying, hey, you can use the platform, but you can also monetize it with your client. So I appreciate that opportunity. So you're competing with some well-known organizations and brands, some big names in the MSP channel that have been in the channel for years. So they've got a number of MSPs already entrenched, into their platforms. What's your plan for addressing that and growing market share against these more established competitors?
We are really focusing on what we are doing, Eric, in the sense that we're laser focused on our product. So we are very product led. Like, we'll let the product speak for itself. We're laser focused on innovation. I did work in very large enterprises in my career. I worked in startups. The ability to act fast based on the feedback of the field is something startups do really much better. Just because you have this constant feedback loop with your partners, you iterate so fast. We have bi-weekly sprints, and make no mistake, like, we're really here to innovate, period. So what the MSPs will see from us is constantly listening, constantly iterating, and constantly evolving what we have today. So this is not something that, hey, we brought to the market and now, like, hey, let's see where this is going to take us. No, we have a very robust roadmap with more AI functionality, documents that write and rewrite themselves, knowledge, automatically detecting gaps, what exists today in the documents versus what's being discussed in the tickets or in the Teams or in Copilot, and automatically trickling that down into the, like Rich says, data lake, and then exposing that back to the AI. We're just getting started. Like, my focus is not on the competition. My focus is on the channel, doing right by the MSPs and keep innovating together with them. One of the things when we were in the beta trial with our founder circle MSPs, they could not believe how fast we were iterating and listening to the feedback that we collect inside the product through Kenny. And like, we're here to really focus on the MSPs and innovation.
We talk a lot about, particularly in recent months, we've been talking a lot about systems of action here on the show. We've had folks from Thread and Zofik on the show within the last few months. And in the MSP context specifically, the most kind of common system of action out there is an AI help desk or service desk automation kind of system. You were saying before, you're building a system of record, not a system of action. You're not competing with the system of action vendors. But when we first spoke, it wasn't just a matter of we're not competing with those people. You said we want to integrate with all of them. So
yes.
Talk a little bit about the sort of 1 + 1 = 3 that you can foresee when you do integrate with these system of action, service desk automation, or other solutions.
Sure. The gist of the matter is, all the other system of actions, they're only as good as the content that's available to them, right? What they are working with. Yes, from a ticketing perspective, they have the ticket history, but what about all the other client information, the assets, the MSP SOPs, and all the other things that an MSP might have on that client other than just the ticket? So our goal is really to help the other system of actions companies like the PSA solutions or the help desk type of solutions, give them much more accurate data, timely data, contextual data they can trust, so that the accuracy of the response they give is much more accurate. The AI is much faster. The resolutions are trusted much more. So that's the 1 + 1 = 3, because one of the biggest pain points right now, like for these type of platforms, is the quality of the data. How stale is the data that they are working with? One of the biggest problems is the technicians work on a ticket. Now they need to go back and update the necessary SOP, update the necessary knowledge base article. And is it really done? Like, we hear that as a really big pain point, because nobody likes to go back and trickle that knowledge back down. So that's the thing that we are solving. So we are enabling them to do their job better.
Yeah, Pinar, as a former MSP, I can relate to, keeping everything updated. The data is everywhere. How do you consolidate it? How do you, make sure you're doing version control, all these manual things, right? So I definitely appreciate the approach that you're taking. In Rich's article, he talks about Lexful becoming kind of the single source of truth. I want to get that right. The single source of truth for MSPs versus their documentation system. So if you could share a little bit more of your long-term vision for Lexful. What are you guys cooking in the kitchen?
That is exactly true. We want to be the master record when it comes to truth, when it comes to what's available in the MSP. We want to be the encyclopedia that is living, right? I often mention this. The paradigm shift we have is, this is what happened when the internet was invented. Suddenly, instead of going back to the books, trying to find like that section where it talked about whatever you wanted to know, you just went to the internet and searched, right? And then the answer was there. So it's the paradigm shift, really, like going from encyclopedia and keyword search to actually like AI native way of bubbling up the context immediately. This is what we started on day one. But where we are going in is a true knowledge operations, where the knowledge is always up to date. Knowledge that you can trust, knowledge that writes and rewrites itself, and also wrapping Lexful as your revenue multiplier. We want to help MSPs monetize new AI-driven revenue streams. This is obviously a win-win scenario for both of us. Enable that functionality, work with MSPs, not only have them scale much easier operationally, but also help them make money in an AI-first world. Immediate roadmap for us will be more integrations, because we talked about this. The more context we have, better we get. And also more AI wow factors, leapfrogs in terms of what MSPs can do with AI operationally. And that is going to be, for us, number one, knowledge gap detection and automatically trickling that knowledge back into the infrastructure that we have. And also in context troubleshooting, right? If the technician is in Copilot, in Teams, in Gemini, wherever they are, they're going to be able to ask Lex immediately without having to switch tabs, switch contacts, and all of that. So those are the immediate roadmaps that we are hoping to tackle in the next few quarters and bring to market.
At a time when everyone basically is thinking about how to use AI to make tools that are familiar to MSPs better, Lexful is one of the companies out there right now thinking instead about how AI can transform, paradigm shift, in your words, completely redefine an MSP's tool stack, how they run the business. It's an interesting time, and there are a lot of interesting companies for us to talk about here on the show. For folks in our audience here who want to get in touch with you or want to learn more about Lexful, where should they go?
They should go to our website, lexful.ai. They can, book a demo, but they can immediately start a trial as well. We make it very easy to do a test run with Lexful. But the experience would be, hey, as soon as you start a trial with us, we create a tenant for you. We migrate your data from your existing tool, and then you get to use it side by side. We believe in a migration without mayhem, especially for a tool as important as us, like documentation, operational workhorse, right? So we don't want to disrupt any operations. We have an API. Guys, that's another thing for us. We are very API driven. Everything that we do is API first. Our front end is decoupled from back end. We already have a RESTful API. If you don't even have a native integration, native connector, take our API, do it yourself. One of the things I love about MSPs are they are very technically adept people already, right? So that's like already you can use our API to do more connections and so on. But basically, it's migration without mayhem, it's zero risk. We run alongside your existing tool so that you can really verify that there's no data loss. You are validating that everything is to your liking. And then at the end of the trial, if you like what you see, and a lot of the MSPs really get to see the paradigm shifting difference between what we have and what their existing solution does. At the end of the trial, if you like what you see, you continue with Lexful in the schema that we already created with the documents that's already there, and you let go of your previous tool. But let's say that you did not like, no feelings hurt. You can continue with your existing tool. There's absolutely no data loss because you have what you have. So either book a demo, talk with one of our people, or just let's start a trial. The other final thing I want to say, Rich, is what we are noticing is also getting data out of existing tools is sometimes difficult. Like for us, our philosophy is the data belongs to the MSP or their clients. So if you want to leave Lexful, we're going to make it very easy for you. Your data is yours. We never use your data, first of all, to train a general AI, right? Your data stays private. And number two is we'll make it very easy for you if you decide, hey, Lexful is not for me and I want to get out. So we're not here to hook you in and never let you go or make it very difficult to let you go. Like we are literally in it for the MSP, with the MSP. We want to accelerate the MSP's journey in this AI first world. And we are here to work with you, not like instead of you or like keep your data or all of that. So I just, from the very beginning as the CEO, this is my message to the MSPs. Guys, we only want you to use our platform if you're super happy with it. If you're not, we'll work with you to take you out of Lexful. We're not going to make it difficult.
Okay. Well, Pinar Ormeci, CEO of Lexful, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Very interesting conversation. Folks, Eric and I are going to take a quick break right now. When we come back on the other side, we're going to share some parting thoughts about this very interesting conversation and have a little fun, wrap up the show. Stick around. We're going to be right back. And welcome back to part 3 of this episode of the MSP Chat Podcast. One last thank you to Pinar Ormeci of Lexful for joining us on the show at a busy time in that company's brief history to talk about what they're doing over there, which is really interesting. I mean, to kind of allude to something that I posted about Lexful on LinkedIn when I first wrote about them for Channelholic. And we'll link to that story, by the way, in the show notes for people who want to read what I've written about Lexful in the past. There are a lot of different companies out there. There are, a bazillion AI native systems of action for MSPs out there. And instead of opting to be the next one, another one of those, what Lexful decided to do was become a partner to the bazillion AI native systems of action. Like they're all going to need a system of record. And the Lexful strategy ultimately, and it encompasses this but goes beyond it, but ultimately They want to be the system of record that those bazillion systems of action and everything else that an MSP relies on to run efficiently needs to get the best, most complete single source of truth data. It's it's an ambitious, but it's a really smart strategy. The question, of course, is just, are they going to be able to build brand awareness, earn trust with MSPs, get market momentum fast enough to overcome some of the advantages that, a company like Kaseya's CEO, Rania Sukar, was on the show with us last summer, talking a lot about data, and consolidating and cleaning up data and building AI around data. It's not like this is an idea that Lexful has entirely to itself. So we'll see how they do, but it's a really smart strategy for a startup.
Very unique strategy. And yeah, it's interesting. They just, integrate with all the platforms, collect all the data from MSP's business, and give them visibility into pretty much every business unit, if you think about it, right? So I think the impact to an MSP's business with a solution like Lexful, the overall visibility and the ability to make better decisions across the entire enterprise are, pretty amazing. Yeah. So it was a great conversation. And I think that, from where I'm sitting, this is a really interesting inflection point for MSPs. I mean, what we've been talking about, earlier in the first segment of the show about the impact of AI and what it can do and when you allow it to do things. I think when you can apply that across an entire business enterprise for decision makers, I'll bet you, Rich, that impact to top line revenue growth and bottom line profitability will be multiplied further than we've been thinking about AI having an impact on an MSP practice up to now. Because we've so far been thinking about the impact of service delivery and things like that. But when you unleash AI across every bit of data in an organization and data about the customers, wow, the opportunities are pretty interesting there. And the last thing that I'll say is, really now, the data is the most valuable thing that MSPs have about their business and their customers' businesses. And I think that's where AI is really, really interesting. I just feel like, when we're consumers, right, and we're signing up for things, and now we're the product, right, because now all the advertisers know about us and all this. Well, the data is the product here, and the opportunity for MSPs to monetize that is going to be really, really interesting in the next 6 to 12 months as these AI models mature and MSPs get a little bit more mature with using and governing AI, and finally maybe understanding how to monetize it with their clients in a more consistent, playbook style method.
Yeah, and here's my little tip of the week. We can't get into this right now, but I couldn't agree with you more that an MSP's data is a hugely valuable asset, maybe even a slightly underappreciated asset in some cases. And therefore, be careful who you share it with, right? I mean, just think about the large language models or small, we're encouraging people to use these AI tools. Just be thoughtful about how much of your extremely valuable data you're sharing with other people out there and who those people are. You really need to kind of think of your data store as your gold store, basically.
Yeah, I think I mentioned at the top of the show, the governance begins with you, the MSP, with your practice, right? And then you can extend it out.
Good point. Yep. And it leaves us with time for just one last thing, folks, and it comes to us from the ring at Madison Square Garden, a heavyweight bout featuring an American boxer named Jarrell Miller, who had a very good day and a maybe not as good day. The good part of the day was he won his fight, The not so great part is at some point during the middle of that fight, he lost his toupee. It just kind of came off on him in the middle of the bout there. But he stayed focused on mission there and did go ahead and win the fight. I seems like a risky place to wear a toupee, basically in the ring there. I don't know, but then again, he can't be the only boxer in the world with a toupee in the ring, and it's not like you hear about people losing the toupee all that often. But all I will say in conclusion here, basically, is this is the most unusual TKO, I think, in boxing history, as in toupee knockout.
Yeah, I watched an interview with him after the fact, and he got some bad advice after using some kind of a chemical or something in his hair. He said he lost his hair started falling out, so he had a buddy that knew a hookup, a barber, a buddy of his that said, "Oh yeah, I'll fit you with a toupee." And so a very hair-raising experience for that boxer.
And with that, folks, we will both thank you for joining us on the show. We'll see you in a week for another episode of MSP Chat. Until then, I'll just remind you this is both a video and an audio podcast, which means that if you're listening to us right now, but you want to check us out on video, go to YouTube, look us up there. If you're watching on YouTube, but you're into audio podcasts, go to Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever it is you get your audio podcast. You're going to find us there probably too. And wherever you do find us, please subscribe, rate, review. It's going to help other people find and enjoy the show just like you do. This show is produced by the great Riley Simpson, part of the team with us here at Channel Mastered, where we help vendors build, grow, and perfect thriving MSP channels. You can learn more about that work that we do at www.channelmastered.com. Channel Mastered has a sister organization called MSP Mastered. That's Eric working one-on-one with MSPs to help them grow and optimize their business. You can learn more about that at www.mspmastered.com. So once again, thank you very much for joining us here on the show, despite the fact that Eric will be skiing as you're enjoying this episode of the show. We will be back in a week's time with another episode for you. And until then, I will just remind you that you cannot spell channel without MSP.